Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2157. We're getting closer and closer to 2191. Woohoo! And I have tested out what our commemorative item is going to be for this year, and it is awesome. I am super, super happy with how it turned out. So, but anyway, welcome. So tonight we are talking about standing in your truth. This is part 5 of our Rooted and Rising series that we're doing this week. Sorry, total mental blank of what we're doing this week. So our theme for the week is Rooted and Rising, and tonight we're talking about standing tall in your truth. When your roots run deep, you don't fear the wind. You stand tall not because it's easy, but because of who you are. What it teaches us about being rooted in your truth strengthens you to rise above pressure, doubt, or rejection. And I always remember whenever I get told to stand tall is to think of a piece of string that is attached, that runs through your body and out the top of your head, and you just pull it up and stand a little taller. Truth is not always loud. It is often quiet, but unshakable. Growth happens when you align your words, choices, and values. Your truth is part of the legacy you are planting. Oh, I love this. So what happens when you stop outsourcing your worth to others' opinions? When you stop outsourcing your worth to others' opinions, you're standing firm in who you are. You've got those deep roots that we've been talking this week about, that root network that you're creating, that foundation. And when it's strong and you're standing tall, you're not putting your worth in other people's opinions. You're not taking other people's opinions to find your value. You are who you are. You know who you are. You speak up, even if your voice shakes or no one claps. I will tell you this, being the type of person that I am, some people call me outgoing. I'm an outgoing introvert. I like to sit quietly and by myself and recharge my batteries. But I do like to be among people, but it drains me. And there are times when I have been on stage, and this is going back to being in high school where I used to work in the drama club and things, and we used to be on stage, that like right before I stepped on stage, I couldn't remember what my first line was. Every time. I'd be standing there in the wings and I'd go to the person next to me and go, "What's my line?" They go, "What do you mean?" I don't remember what my line is. What's my line? And then I get out there, and the first few words, and when I step out there and step into character, my first few words were a little shaky, but then I stood a little taller and off I went. I was in character, in mode. The first few words were a little shaky, but the moment I stepped out of the wings and made my entrance onto the stage, the fog went away. I found my voice. I remembered my lines, but my voice at first was always a little shaky. But once I got to my second line, I was off and running. I was doing great. There are times we were doing speeches in school from, oh God, when did I do my first speech? Probably around the age of 6 or 7 when we did our first speeches. And again, I would always start off shaky, but once I got into my rhythm, it didn't matter how many times I practiced it. My voice would always start off shaky, but once I got into my rhythm, I was fine. There were times that I would speak up against things. I remember the first time, oh my gosh, being in the Air Force was pretty good. That was a very different experience because basically you didn't talk back. You did not talk back to your commanding officer. You did not talk back to those who were of higher rank to you. You just stood there, you shut up, and you took it. And they taught us that on our recruit course or basic training. We did not have. They basically stripped us of identities. They told us we did not have an identity. We were only known by our last name. They didn't even want to know what our first names were, because that would then personalize it. So we were only known by last names or "Hey you." It was mentally, it was very tough, but you don't speak up. You didn't speak up. You didn't talk back. They asked you a question, you answered. Did your voice shake? Heck yeah. And once I left the Air Force, the first time I had a boss I had a really good boss in my first job after I left the Air Force. He was really good. And then he left and we got this new guy in there who was not the greatest boss and a bit of a yes man for his boss. And he came in one day and told me I was going to be doing something. And I was sort of like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. Because it was way more than what I was supposed to be doing. It was yet another thing thrown on top of me. And so I went into him. Oh, that's right. I was going to end up working like extra hours and all of that. And they weren't going to pay me overtime and all that. And I just went into him and said, I'm not. And I remember standing there in his office. I said, can I just talk to you for a moment? He goes, yeah. And so I told him what the issue was. And the whole time I'm standing there, my whole body is shaking. I spoke up. My voice was shaking. My body was shaking. I got back to my desk and I just slumped down in it. And my heart was pounding and I had to take a few breaths. And one of my friends who worked just outside my office, she comes and she says, are you okay? I says, I just had to go and I told her what I had to do. And she was sort of like, she says, well, you did it. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, and you're still alive. I will tell you that when she came in and told me that you did it, that was something you had to do. She said, I totally support your decision to do that because what they were asking you to do is completely unfair and outside of what your scope is. And expecting you to, pony up and do it. She said, I totally support you. She says, and you're still alive. You did it and you're still alive. So I was just sort of like, okay. So when you speak up and even if your voice shakes and no one claps, it's okay. You made it through. You're still alive. You're still breathing. You can stand tall because you stood up for something that you believed in. You saw something wasn't right and you spoke up. And that gave me a little more confidence. You live in alignment. When you live in alignment with your values and not someone else's expectations, you gain that confidence. That little string gets pulled a little tighter and you stand a little taller when you're in alignment with your values. If somebody's asking you to do something that goes against your values, which was in this case what they were doing, I had to speak up. I was not comfortable bringing this up to somebody who was my boss because I just got out of 6 years in the Air Force and they tell you to go do this and you just go do it. This time I was sort of like, okay, I got to stand up. So when you live in alignment with your values and not someone else's expectations, you can stand taller in that. Again, it gives you confidence. You create inner peace by no longer pretending. There are times that I've had to do stuff where I've had to pretend that everything's okay and we're walking fine and we're talking fine and everything is perfectly fine. And inside you're going, I absolutely hate this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. Why the heck did they make me come do this? And there's a lot of that stuff that you get when you're in the military. You get some stuff that you have to go do that you really don't want to do. Like when you're running around the outside of the airfield, like around the road that goes around the whole perimeter of the airfield and things. Having to do that, and it's like, I really hate running. But they come by and they go, how are you doing? And it's like, I'm doing fine, thank you, sir. As you're running along, or sergeant, whoever it was. But once you can stand in your truth and you know who you are and you gain that inner peace and you can be yourself, you can be your unapologetic self. You are who you are. And if they don't like it, it don't matter. And I will tell you this, whether it's because Brad's gone through cancer with Brad's cancer journey and then his eventual passing, me getting older, I don't know which, but I really don't care on a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff that I would get irked about in the past. Now I really don't give a crap. I am who I am. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. And it's no problem. It's just water off a duck's back. I really got to that point where, and that's me standing in my truth. This is who I am. If you can't handle it, then you go your way, I'll go mine, and it's no bother. It doesn't worry me at all. And you know when your true friends are there because they were always lifting you up and they are encouraging you. They're encouraging you to go forth and grow. They're not holding you back. If they are trying to hold you back, they're not really your friends. So how we carry forward, we anchor your identity in truth, not titles or roles. I am Helen. This is who I am. If you don't like what I say, you don't have to listen. And that's what really, that's something that this just cracks me up. There's sometimes that I see some videos on and reels and all that sort of stuff, and I will go and have a look at the comments going, that's a very interesting opinion that person has. I wonder what people have to say. And people are like trashing the person speaking. And I'm like, and you see the same names coming up over and over again. And I'm like, if you don't like the person and what they're saying, why are you still following them? I swear, there's some people out there who just feel happy or I don't know what, because they want to make negative comments on somebody else's stuff, which is really good. If you don't have anything nice to say, zip it. Yeah, this is who I am, and I accept who I am. I love who I am. And if you don't like it, I don't care. It has no bearing on me or who I am. Let your growth be guided by integrity, not popularity. Think about that. Let your growth be guided by integrity, not popularity. You have some of these influencers out there. Some have integrity, some don't. Some are just more worried about how many followers they're getting, how many likes they're getting, how viral their videos are going. If you're not standing in your truth, that may be a guiding principle. Some people will have that as their guiding principle. Oh, I'm not popular because you're not standing in your truth. Get into your integrity, stand in your truth, and everything else will fall into place. Remember that even the tallest trees began with hidden roots. Truth grows the same way. Remember back, was it the first night where we talked about the bamboo? How the first few years it's growing that network of roots and that foundation and everything else. And then once it's got everything set up down below the surface of the soil, all of a sudden, overnight, these things are growing in leaps and bounds. It's like these overnight successes. What are they doing? They're standing in their truth. They're being integral. I don't know. They're standing in their integrity. They're being and they're growing. People say, "Oh, they're an overnight success." No, you don't see what's going on below the surface. Okay, remember, they are down there. They're growing their foundation. They are setting up their foundation. They are growing their roots down there, their little root network and stuff, making it as strong and as stable as they possibly can. And then they suddenly go, it's time to shine. And boom, like the bamboo, they start growing feet. They start growing feet every. Jeepers, I can't talk straight today. They start growing in leaps and bounds like the bamboo does once it's got that network, that foundation laid. And all of a sudden people go, oh my gosh, what an overnight success they are. No, they've been working on their roots for ages. It could be years, it could be months, it could be weeks, but they have been working on they've been working on their foundation and getting everything in place until they felt ready to shine. Remember, I love that bamboo, the story of bamboo, so I try and use it wherever I can. But here's your legacy connection. Every time you choose truth over silence, you're modeling courage for the next generation. Your honesty becomes their inheritance. Tell those stories. Get the stories out there. Show the times where you stood in your truth, that you did that there might have been something that's like, oh, but auntie, well, grandma, why did you do, what happened here? And you got into trouble for this. Why? Because I was standing in my truth. People didn't like it. So they did the only thing that they thought they could. They tried to bully me and I reacted. And I was just like, no, I stood in my truth. I became who I stood in what I believed in. I stood in my faith. I stood in who I am. I was faithful to myself. I was faithful to my beliefs. I was honest about it. Truth will always win out. So here are your reflection questions for you. We've got 3 for you tonight. What truth have you been holding back that's ready to rise? Where in your life are you being invited to stop shrinking? Yeah, I'm short enough. I don't need to shrink any. What inner value, sorry, that just pops into my head. What inner value or belief feels non-negotiable right now? And in closing, you were not made to hide. You were made to rise, firmly rooted, unapologetically honest, and glowing with the strength of your truth. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konera.